Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Lens podcast. My name's Chad Thomas. I'm joined by Jamie and Kirstin tonight, and hopefully by Alex. We're having some technical difficulties. That's why we're delayed a little bit, but we're rolling. He's in the green room, so we'll see if his microphone works when he comes in. Hey guys, how was your week?
It was a week, right? So things happened, stuff got done. Christmas is getting ever closer. I just realized that today. Um, However, I'm proud to announce that shopping has begun. So I got that going for me.
Yeah, it's
I
better
mean,
than not.
Well, I will tell you this, and I say this every year. I am never not impressed by my ability to wait till the last minute and still get it done. So I'm doing it for years. I'm a trained professional.
Well,
However, it's
that
not the lifestyle I choose to live. I want to live. It's one I choose.
uh-huh.
So this year I thought I'll get ahead. And now I'm like, yeah, where's all the stuff? Right? Waiting, patiently waiting for it to arrive. So not
Okay.
all things are Amazon deliveries. They aren't here anyway. So
Okay.
spoiled by them though, I'll tell you.
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
What about you guys?
I got everything done for my first Christmas, which is next Saturday or this Saturday, the 20th.
Mm.
Well, everything's ordered. As long as Amazon doesn't fail, it'll
Okay.
all be here. So, and then a lot of stuff for our real Christmas is in place and ready to go. I mean, I got Al. Oh, I can't say what I got Alex because he's right there in the background. But
Yeah, he can hear us.
so anyway, so yeah, that's where I'm at.
Speaking of gifts that keep on giving, there's Bert Lynch
Um,
and Todd. Hey, Todd. Speaking of another gift that keeps on giving, there it is.
I mean, yeah, I just started shopping too. Hopefully Alex's gifts arrive on time. They say tomorrow, but who knows?
Yeah.
And yeah, have a few things for Cassie already. So
That's
she's
that's
set.
the important one.
Oh yeah,
So.
Yeah, much more so, right?
absolutely, she is.
Well, we've been talking a little bit, but let's see if we can get Alex to join in here and see what happens. So I'm going to throw Alex in. We don't have a whole introduction for him because he's been on here before and he's a team member. So sorry, Alex, we didn't go
It's
that.
all right.
But here we go.
Give me 4 minutes to jump into Chat GPT, and I come up with something pretty funny. So,
So Alex, how are you? No audio.
Wah wah.
Well, at least you're here and you can type messages to us.
if you talk really loudly, like use your hands like this, maybe we'll hear you.
So, well,
Okay.
you can keep trying to work on it if you want, Alex. We'll just keep you there, and if you decide to go away, we'll make do. So, but anyway, if you guys are ready, I'll go ahead and get started with what I've got prepared here.
Yes, let's do
Absolutely.
it.
Okay. Well, first of all, let's pull up some images so I don't forget that this time. And let's see. So I recently took a trip to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida area. And as much as I enjoy experiencing travel to a crowded vacation destination during a crowded holiday week, I decided that I wanted to take a day and do something else. I remembered that as a child, when we drove to see the mouse and his friends, we would always stop at St. Augustine on the way down. So I decided to take a side trip on a day when the kids had other plans. I always forgot the rich history of St. Augustine area and how far back the history goes. At some point, I may do another episode on Castillo de San Marcos, which is the Spanish fort located in the city and its rich history. But tonight, I wanted to focus on the lighthouse, its predecessors, history, and haunting. So I actually made 2 trips to the lighthouse. The first was at the end of the day that I spent exploring the historic area of St. Augustine. The lighthouse is located on Anastasia Island at the eastern end of Florida, or on the eastern coast of Florida. I arrived around 3:15 and paid my admission fee. Of course, the first thing I wanted to do was climb the 219 steps to the top of the
Chad, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You just got really muffled on your
Okay.
audio.
Is that any better?
Oh, as
Yes.
crystal clear now. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, let's see. The first thing I wanted to do was climb the 219 steps to the top of the lighthouse. Those steps are divided by 8 landings. The cast iron spiral staircase is an amazing combination of art and engineering. Each of the steps that were made in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they are each unique. As you go towards the top of the 165-foot structure, each step is slightly smaller than the one before it. Each one is marked with a specific number and dot to denote its location. What an amazing experience to climb and see the view from the top. When you get to the top, you have the opportunity to step out onto the walkway that circles the top of the lighthouse. This is approximately 4 feet wide, and it is below the light room, so you can walk around it without being blinded or interfering with the light. The view was amazing and worth the climb. After getting my breath back, I descended the steps and decided to explore the rest of the complex. The displays in the lighthouse and the separate keepers' quarters are dedicated to the history of the lighthouses. The connected complex includes a maritime research and preservation lab. There is so much to cover here, but I don't want to turn this into a Steve Dills episode, so I'm just going to touch on the history of the lighthouse before digging into the hauntings. Just so we're not going to go deep into the history. I'm going to try not to. But when we talk about the lighthouse history of Anastasia Island, we're not talking about one single iconic building, but multiple structures that cover over 450 years of history. Dating back to 1565, when the Spanish first colonized what would become Florida. In 1565, the Spanish constructed a wooden watchtower on a high dune on the island. This was used to spot enemy ships and aid their own ships struggling to enter the harbor. This made it the earliest navigational aid in North America. Around 1737, a more permanent structure was built to serve these purposes. A 30-foot tower built of coquina, a limestone formed from shell fragments, was built and used by the Spanish. In 1763, when the Spanish were defeated, taking everything they had, including, quote, the nails in the wood to Cuba, the town of St. Augustine still had its watchtower. The British doubled the height and added a 30-foot wooden structure to the existing tower. Between 1763 and 1783, we started to see the first historical references to a lighthouse on nautical charts. I couldn't find a specific date as to when the first light was installed in the lighthouse, and control went back and forth between the Spanish and the British multiple times. In 1824, 3 years after Florida officially became part of the United States, the watchtower was refitted and was officially commissioned as Florida's first lighthouse. This lighthouse would have used a system of Winslow Lewis argand lamps and reflector panels and fueled by whale oil. Unfortunately, the system wasn't very bright, and captains complained about the quality of the U.S. lighthouses versus the European lights. The Europeans had developed a new type of lens system in 1822 that provided a brighter light. Not having the funding to change out the optics of the St. Augustine Lighthouse, the decision was made to raise it another 10 feet in 1852. Now at 70 feet, the improvement was negligible. In 1853, a new optical system was installed using a single lard oil lamp and a fourth order Fresnel lens. This lens and lamp structure would have been visible for 10 to 14 miles. It was most likely at this point that a clockwork mechanism was installed to rotate the massive glass lens that gives us the iconic sweeping beams that we know of lighthouses today. Now, the Civil War brought an interesting turn of events to the lighthouse. Florida has seceded from the United States in an attempt to slow Union shipping and resupply. Confederate sympathizers removed the lens and clockwork mechanism from the lighthouse. It is believed that this 400 to 600 pound lens was removed, hidden, and possibly buried nearby. The Union Navy steamed into the harbor on gunboats and took over St. Augustine peacefully. After jailing the future St. Augustine mayor, Paul Arnois, on a prison ship, the whereabouts of the clockworks and lens were revealed. The victorious American government relit the beacon in 1867. However, as the sea level was rising, it would not be long before a new St. Augustine light station was required. Now, professional lighthouse keepers would be transferred from northern states to replace those Confederate sympathizers running the port before. The location of the structure was close to the shore, and it was realized that the constant beach erosion was making the long-term viability of the structure unrealistic. The U.S. Congress appropriated $100,000 funding for a new lighthouse during the Florida Reconstruction period. The U.S. Lighthouse Service began construction on a new 165-foot tower in 1871 and did not finish until 1874. Workers from St. Augustine included African American residents. Temporary buildings to house both people and horses were constructed on site and then torn down as to not change the appearance of the light station from the sea, as regulations required. The tower was constructed of brick, and its day mark was a distinctive black and white spiral with a red lamp house at the top. On October 15th, 1874, lighthouse keeper William R. Russell lit the oil lamp inside the new first-order Fresnel lens for the first time. He most likely walked to the tower from his residence at the old St. Augustine light station, upon which the sea was rapidly encroaching. The lens is 9 feet tall, and Russell would have had to climb inside to light the lamps. The jewel-like lens was handcrafted just for St. Augustine in Paris, France, by the company of Sauder and Lemoinor. It represented the height of Victorian engineering and technology, and cast its beam much further out to sea than its predecessor. The new light demonstrated 3 fixed flashes from 3 bullseye panels that could be seen from up to 19 to 24 nautical miles, depending on atmospheric conditions. Fueled by oil and then kerosene before electricity came to the lighthouse, the original lens would have given off a brightly hued yellow light. The original lighthouse structure was decommissioned when the new lighthouse went online. In 1880, the coquina structure finally gave in to Mother Nature and collapsed into the Atlantic Ocean. On February 28, 1889, the St. Augustine Weekly News described the lens in the following manner. The lamp was a brass cylinder of 10 gallons capacity. Inside it was a heavyweight which governs the flow of oil to the burner. The burner has 5 wicks in concentric circles. The chimney leads to the roof. It has a damper which regulates the flame. The globe is a huge case of glass which revolves around the lamp every 9 minutes. It makes a flash every 3 minutes when a bull's eye lines up between the lamp and the human eye. The cage weighs 2 tons. Between 1874 and 1936, not much changed at the lighthouse. Keepers came and went doing their specific task. This included carrying oil up to the lamp house and winding the mechanism. To keep the lamp burning, the keeper would have to carry 35-pound cans of kerosene up the steps. Now this held just under 10 gallons, up to the lamp house 5 or 6 times a night. On top of that, they needed to wind the clockwork mechanism that rotated the lens every 2.5 hours. This also meant climbing to the top and raising the weights. This provided the power needed to rotate the 12,787-pound lens 1 revolution every 9 minutes. On top of that, the keeper and their assistant were required to take care of the upkeep on the lighthouse and the duplex keeper's quarters. On top of that, the keeper was expected to give tours to any visitor that came to the facility. This included taking them to the top and showing them how things worked, as well as tours of the family quarters to show them what life was like as a lighthouse keeper. Now, this was all defined in the 100-page manual that they were required to learn. It included specifics about vaccination, payment of debts, intoxication, and many other things. Life began to change at the lighthouse in 1936. Electrification was happening across the lighthouse service structures, and soon the need to carry oil was eliminated. On March 1st, 1936, a 1,000-watt electric lamp went into service. This provided 20,000 candle power, which was much brighter than the oil lamp. An electric motor was installed to rotate the lens. This change reduced the role of the lighthouse keeper, and there wasn't much that they really needed to do. World War II brought more change. During the war, the St. Augustine Lighthouse was closed to the public and transformed into a U.S. Coast Guard station. Its power beacon was dimmed from the 1,000 watts to just 50 watts to prevent German U-boats from using the light to spot Allied ships. The lighthouse keepers became Coast Guard personnel, with head keeper Cardell Daniels enlisting as a boatswain's mate. The grounds were also repurposed for the war effort. Housing barracks and facilities to service military vehicles like jeeps were built. Beyond navigation, the lighthouse served as a strategic coastal lookout, with keepers monitoring Allied aircraft and even witnessing naval battles offshore. By the mid-20th century, the St. Augustine Lighthouse entered a new era of modernization and preservation. In 1955, the lighthouse was fully automated with the installation of an astronomical clock, an automatic lamp changer, and a backup generator. This technological upgrade eliminated the need for on-site keepers, leading to the retirement of the last lighthouse keeper. In 1960, the keeper's quarters were declared surplus, federal property, and offered for sale. A decade later, in 1970, the structure suffered significant damage due to arson. Shortly afterwards, St. Johns County purchased the property, helping to ensure the site's long-term protection. Further modernization followed in 1971 when the lighthouse's lighting system was converted to a sun relay, allowing the beacon to automatically activate at sunset and shut off at sunrise. The system still commonly used in aids to navigation. A major turning point came in 1980 when the Junior Service League of St. Augustine launched an ambitious multi-million-dollar restoration campaign. This community-driven effort marked the beginning of the lighthouse's transformation from a neglected structure to a preserved historic landmark. In recognition of its historical and architectural significance, the lighthouse complex was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1981. In 1982, the Junior Service League formalized its stewardship by signing a 99-year lease with the St. Johns County for the Keeper's House and surrounding grounds, along with a 30-year lease with the U.S. Coast Guard for the lighthouse tower itself. Tragedy struck again in 1986 when the historic First Order Fresnel lens was damaged by rifle fire, shattering 19 of its prisms. To maintain navigational safety, the U.S. Coast Guard temporarily replaced the original light with an airport-style rotating beacon. Once more, the Junior Service League led efforts to restore the historic Fresnel lens, preserving one of the lighthouse's most iconic features. In 1993, the Junior Service League hosted the first Community Day, celebrating the successful relighting of the restored Fresnel lens with public festivities and fireworks, symbolizing the lighthouse's rebirth as a community treasure. In 2002, ownership of the Lighthouse Tower and the historic Fresnel lens was officially transferred from the United States Coast Guard to the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum Incorporated, a separately incorporated nonprofit organization originally established by the Junior Service League of St. Augustine. Today, the lighthouse is considered a privately owned, active aid to navigation, with the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum continuing to own, operate, and maintain the historic light station for the future generations. Okay, so maybe that was a little more than just touching on the history, but you know how much I love the history. So, now let's jump into the hauntings a little bit. So as I said earlier, I made 2 trips to the lighthouse. The second trip was on Friday night, and I was joined by Alex. We had purchased tickets for what was called the Dark of the Moon tour, and I was expecting a ghost tour similar to what I've experienced in Williamsburg and other cities. I was expecting to be taken through the buildings and told stories of people's experiences. but that was not the case. We signed up for the second tour, which started at 10:15. When we arrived, we checked in and were given glow stick necklaces, which were our tickets. It also helped them keep track of where people were. We were also given the opportunity to rent a K2 meter, which I thought was a little strange. When the group assembled, we walked past the keeper's quarters, past the lighthouse, and into one of the research buildings. Here we were told a few stories about tragedies and believed hauntings. And at this point, we were told the property closes at 11:45. If we wanted to climb the tower, we should do that first because it would close first. And then we were told where to check out for the night and then turned loose on the property. We weren't really prepared for an investigation, but I had brought my flashlight and recorder with me, and Alex had downloaded some apps on his phone. So we did get a chance to investigate. Now we'll get to that in a little bit, but here are a few stories that were relayed to us. So we'll start with Keeper Joseph Andre. He was one of the most enduring ghost stories at St. Augustine Lighthouse centers on Joseph Andre, a 19th century lighthouse keeper who tragically fell to his death while painting the original tower in 1859. Many visitors and staff have reported seeing a shadowy figure or apparition at the top of the lighthouse, sometimes interpreted as Andre himself, still dutifully watching over the sea. Some accounts even include unexplained cold spots, footsteps on the metal stairs, and the scent of cigar smoke, a detail linked by some to former keepers associated with the site's past. Maria Mestre de los Dolores Andre, Joseph's widow, is the person who succeeded him as the keeper and became the first Hispanic American woman to command a federal shore installation. It is also part of the lighthouse's supernatural lore. Witnesses on site have reported seeing a full-bodied apparition of a woman in white, in a white dress, often at the top of the tower or near the grounds. Some stories describe her guiding or gently touching guests, or simply appearing and disappearing mysteriously. As I discussed earlier, in the 1870s, Congress had approved funding for a new lighthouse tower to replace the older structure that was being swallowed up by the sea. The construction began under the supervision of Hezekiah Pitti, a man who had moved with his family from Maine to oversee the project. Living on site were his wife and children, Mary, 15, Eliza, 13, and little Carrie, who was 4. They quickly made the bustling lighthouse grounds their playground. A narrow-gauge railroad had been built between the bay and the tower site to bring in supplies. To the girls, the rail cart became more than a work tool. It was their own Victorian-era roller coaster. Riding it down towards the water and back up again became an everyday thrill. But on July 10th, 1873, that laughter turned to tragedy. The 3 girls and a 4th unknown African-American girl, who was 10, went on what should have been an ordinary ride. The wooden stop board at the edge of the track, normally there to keep the rail cart from plunging into the water, was missing. The cart careened straight off the tracks, flipping into the surf, and trapped the children underneath. A nearby worker named Dan Sessions witnessed the accident and raced to help. Using all his strength, he lifted the overturned cart, but by the time he freed the children, 3 of the 4 had drowned. Mary, Elizabeth, and the unnamed 10-year-old girl lost their lives that day. Only young Carrie survived. The entire community was shaken. Construction stopped, and the town of St. Augustine came together to mourn. A funeral was held, and the Petit family returned to Maine to bury their daughters. The unnamed girl's final resting place remains a mystery. No historical record has yet confirmed her identity, but some say their story didn't end with their deaths. Today, the St. Augustine Lighthouse is widely recognized as one of the most frequently reported haunted sites in the United States. And the spirits of the Petit girls is central to that reputation. Visitors and staff have told of children's laughter echoing through the areas where no one else is present, especially around the keeper's house and the staircase. Some describe the sounds of tiny footsteps racing up and down the tower long after tours have finished. One staff member closing up for the night reported hearing giggling at the top of the lighthouse. Assuming that someone was still inside, he climbed the 219 steps, only to find no one there. As he began his descent, the laughter followed him, this time from below. Tour visitors have experienced moments that defy easy explanation. One guest found her shoelace inexplicably tied to the stair rail before beginning her climb, with no memory of doing it herself. Others have reported small, Victorian era figures peering around corners or vanishing when approached. Whether it's laughter in the basement, which is the only part of the keeper's house that survived the 1970 fire, EMF meter spikes during ghost tours, or fleeting figures among the maritime hammock trails, many describe the girl's presence as playful, like spirits still engaged in a never-ending game of hide and seek. The show Ghost Hunters has done episodes at the Lighthouse. When the TAPS team, Jason Hawes and Grant Wilson, stepped into the St. Augustine Lighthouse, they weren't just visiting any old historic site. They focused their investigation on areas steeped in the lighthouse's long and sometimes tragic past. The spiral staircase, the keeper's house basement, and the tower itself. And what they encountered was enough to make even seasoned investigators take notice. In the basement, where one of the petite girls is said to have recovered after the tragic accident, the team captured something chilling. A disembodied voice on their audio equipment. Clear, distinct, and unmistakably female. It seemed to cry out, "Help me." Then there was the shadows. On video, investigators claim to see a dark, shadowy figure moving up the spiral staircase, even peering over the railing at them, though no team member was anywhere near the spot. And throughout the keeper's house and tower, there were sounds, footsteps echoing on empty stairs, voices whispering through hallways, all without a single living person present. After reviewing their recordings, TAPS came to a startling conclusion. The level of paranormal activity at the St. Augustine Lighthouse was among the highest they had ever witnessed. For the team, this wasn't just another ghost story. It was a site that demanded respect, caution, and above all, attention. Now, Alex and I didn't have that kind of experience, but it was definitely interesting. When we were done hearing the stories, we made our way over to the lighthouse tower. We took our time as there were about 20 people in our group, which meant there were about 40 people on property that night. When we got to the tower, I pulled out my digital camera and tried to replicate some of the pictures that were taken from the bottom of the tower. I'm actually going to change some slides here because I have pictures that I took from that night. So on these first couple of pictures, you can see that there's a black line across the middle or the top of the frame. And this happened on multiple pictures. Now, I hadn't had any problem with this camera before. But when I got there, I also noticed that my battery was dead. Now, I had just put a fresh battery in. So I put a new battery in and then ended up taking these pictures with this line across it, which made no sense to me. So what it looked like to me is that the shutter curtain was not opening the whole way. So I was frustrated and tried multiple times, but there was no difference. So Alex and I proceeded up the steps towards the first platform, and I tried my camera again, and it worked fine. As we ascended the tower and arrived at the first landing, Alex got chills and the hair on his arm stood up. This also happened to him on the third landing. When we got further up, I had a strange feeling come over me. Now, this one is hard for me to explain. It was sort of a lightheadedness and a feeling of being where I belong. When we got to the top, most of the other people in our group were heading down. So we spent a few minutes out on the walkway and talked with a volunteer who was stationed there. It was a chilly, windy evening, but the view was amazing, and we watched the beams sweep over the coast. That was Alex this was one of the landings. So that's how dark it is. We could barely see anything. This is closer to the top where the lamp house lights the stairwell. And then this is what it looked like from the top. Since we were the last people coming up for the night, the volunteer decided that when we headed down, he would secure the walkway and also descend. This allowed us the opportunity to descend without any of the lanterns on, since he was ahead of us and turned them off as he went. The upper 2 levels were dimly lit from the glow of the main light, but the further down we got, it turned pitch black. It was a surreal experience to come down in the dark, but very cool. We heard different noises, creaks, and other things, but we couldn't tell what they were. And because of the wind, we discounted them because we couldn't determine where they might have come from. We spent the next few minutes going through the fuel room and the office at the base of the lighthouse. When Alex entered the fuel room, the hair on his arm stood up again. We couldn't get any activity. We didn't really get much activity in either of these rooms. From there, we moved outside toward the oak tree that we were told sometimes had activity from the young girls. We were starting to do an EVP session and flashlight session when another group of curious people came over. We had a few responses to questions with the flashlight, and a woman from their group decided to try and get their K2 meter into our setup. This knocked over our equipment, and after several attempts, they wandered away. Not having much continued luck, we decided to head into the keeper's quarters. We looked around the first floor, and Alex felt pulled to the basement. This area was the only part of the house that was original from when the house was destroyed by arson in the 1970s. It is an interesting point that the structure in Florida actually has a basement. Now, this is really technically a lower level that was hewn from the soft coquina limestone we talked about earlier. It was then lined with brick, and 2 cisterns were built in the center of the structure to store fresh water. So we all know that limestone and water can help carry residual energy. So we moved to the far side of the building, and Alex set the flashlight down. As soon as he let go and asked if the spirit could acknowledge the light, it came on. It was at this point that a couple walked into the room. We asked the spirit to turn the light on again, and it did. The couple was impressed and asked if we knew if it was a male or female spirit. We hadn't gotten that far, so I asked if it was a female, and the light came on dimly. We asked a few more questions with no response. I asked if the spirit was being shy, and the light again came on dimly. The woman asked if this was one of the petite girls, and the light came on again, still dimly. Now, when we were taking our tour with the guide, he let us know that the girls liked to see tattoos, and they were always interested in that and would react to tattoos. So Alex said, before that, Alex came up with the word crash on his SPI app. Now, we associated that with the girls and their crash into the ocean. So Alex said, I hear you like tattoos, and the light came on again dimly. When he pulled up his shirt sleeve, the light came on brightly. As soon as he pointed out both tattoos on his arm, the light went off completely. It was at this point that Alex saw a white ball of light move from the direction of the flashlight towards an exterior door. Everyone in our group heard the door rattle. It sounded like someone was trying to open the door from the outside. It was 11:40, and the volunteer staff was starting to clear the buildings. A staff member came down the steps right after all this happened and told us our time was up. We told her about our experience in the door and asked if there could be anybody on the other side. She said it was an emergency exit, but that there shouldn't have been anybody there, and she went to check on it. Now, the door was not properly latched, which she also told us was very unusual. Had we experienced an interaction with one of the petite girls who decided to leave, or was it just a fluke experience with the wind and a door that shouldn't have been unlatched? Did my camera just happen to malfunction for a handful of pictures and then go back to working normally? Or did something not want to be captured in an image? We may never know, but it was certainly an interesting experience that left us wanting to go back again. Unfortunately, there wasn't time on this trip, but I think another trip to the lighthouse is going to be in my future. So, as I wrap up things tonight, here are some of my resources. www.staugustinelighthouse.org, multiple pages. FloridaHistoricCoast.com, again, multiple pages. Hauntedplaces.com, ghost-hunters-St. Augustine-lighthouse. www.history.uscg.mil, and then navigated to St. Augustine Lighthouse. Physics.stackexchange.com. Questions /472415. What is a third order Fresnel lens? And www.lighthousefriends.com. Light.asp ID 347. So that's what happened on our trip to St. Augustine. It was a pretty cool night. And yeah, what do you guys think?
This is the part where one of us has to talk.
I
Right?
know
I was letting you go. I'm sorry.
that. I mean, the experiences that you guys had sound very interesting, especially with the basement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know, like, was it the wind with the door, or was it actually something paranormal? Like, I would love to try and test out more with that.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we didn't have time. Like,
Right.
the climb to the top took a good, I think, probably at least half hour, 45 minutes. And then just exploring some of the other places. And again, there were so many people there. It was hard to get to
Right.
places because you didn't want to interrupt other people's investigations. Had we known what the flow was, we probably would have tried to get there for the 9:00 entry, and then we would have had more time to investigate.
Yeah.
Right.
Hindsight's 2020. So,
But you did something that I always try to do, and that's get there in the daytime. Get
mhm,
get the feel and the lay of the land, if you will, and get the tour, and get someone some attention, more attention to the details that you won't pick up at night. 'Cause that way you know where to go.
mhm,
Um, yeah, this is such a well documented place, so I don't think you could have showed up at 10 minutes to the tour and been fine too. I
mhm.
think with knowing what
Right.
because it's obvious. I mean, like there's so much out there. Um, with respects to being in the upper part of the spire, and especially on the down on your way down in the dark, um, you know, things are different at night,
Uh,
right? Everything's your senses are just that you're off at first, and then you get more in tuned. Did you find that as you were leaving the light because of the light above, and then as you were coming through, you were starting, was that where like more things were becoming? You mentioned you were hearing things, you were sensing things at least. Was that in that zone of coming out of the light into the dark, or was it just in general because it was the quietest part of the night with less people there?
I think if I remember correctly, it was in general. Like you said, when you go into the darkness, you're focusing more on the sounds because you can't hear
Right.
or you can't see.
Yeah.
Um, and you're holding on to the railing, because the last thing you want to do is tumble down the remaining of the 219 steps.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling once you get started, you're going to hit, you're going to fall until you get to a landing.
You're going to go until you hit the person in front of you,
Mhm. Yeah.
and you hope they catch you.
Yep. Alex can talk.
Hey, we got it.
Yeah.
Get in here.
So,
All right.
Alex, what do you remember from coming down the steps? because the moon was pretty full that night.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because you would, well, we have expectations, I guess. Um, when
Oh,
when you have windows, or because this isn't in the middle of nowhere.
right.
St.
Oh,
Augustine's right there.
hold on.
There he
So
is.
I didn't put Alex up correctly. So Alex, can you go through that again because nobody could hear what you said? So as we were coming down the steps, Alex,
Oh yeah.
how did you feel?
As we were coming down the steps, let me think about this for a second. It felt really, really dark, and it was like my eyes could never adjust to how dark it was, though they should have, because there was outside light coming through windows, but I never really adjusted to how dark it was, and it was I wouldn't say creepy going down the stairs, but it was just an eerie, unknown feeling.
Okay.
Yeah, it was surreal. It was really surreal.
So you've been there and done that. And you know now to go earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any part of the property that you didn't get to that you wish you would have? Or is it you don't know what you don't know?
I think we don't know what we don't know, but from what I understand, I believe it's the basement is the most haunted or has the most activity. So I think we got to one of the key places. Like I said earlier, Alex was drawn down there when we went in the building. Everything above the basement is restored. Like it didn't, it was completely burned. So it's a reproduction. That doesn't mean there's not activity there. We all know that the fire energy can also spur things, but it might be interesting to investigate some of the 2 levels.
Yeah, I never saw the top levels of that house. I just went in the door and straight down the stairs.
Okay.
So, one, it would be interesting to see in general, but I'd love to investigate those areas that we didn't really get to.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the internal pictures that you saw were ones that I took the first day I was there. So
Heather has a nice comment here that you got to have an experience that most do not get to have when visiting the lighthouse, and she and Bert have been there as well.
And I want to say the cost for that program is relatively. I mean, I think it was like $38 per person.
That's not bad.
So for an investigation, even a crowded investigation, that's not bad at all. It would have been better if we had 3 hours. What's that?
That include the K2 rental as
No,
well?
the K2 rental was $5 plus your ID until you turned it back in.
Ooh.
I mean, but still, I mean that's not bad. But
well, considering we've lost equipment at public events that we've hosted, maybe keeping IDs is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Glow sticks, IDs, great ideas.
Well, to give credit here, Alex, you brought home a good idea. So at our last investigation, we utilized the glow stick idea for team color or group colors, with a mix of the 2 groups that we had, and then a separate color, a blue color for us as leads
As
to
much
wear.
as Jerry hated it.
Yeah, and yeah, well, it wasn't for everyone, unfortunately, and some of the guests didn't go with it very well, warmly. I should say not welcomely, but warmly either. But it really did. Instead of usually wristbands, which they work, I guess, but they're not nearly as cool as these are. And
and when you're in a dark room,
concept and everything, it worked really well.
Yeah, when you're in a dark room, it allows you to know where people are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that also helps with the investigation. Like if you hear a noise coming, you can see that there's a person there.
Right.
Or if you hear a noise from somewhere and there's no glow stick, you're like,
I wonder if there's a person there.
Right. I agree, and that's what I'm saying. I was a little skeptical at first as well, and but it was a neat idea. So thanks for following through on it, making it happen.
So, Alex, why don't you talk a little bit about the investigation down in the basement, because that hit you pretty hard.
Yeah, it was it was pretty intense. I seeing a ball of light fly across the room that I don't think anybody else saw or noticed was really interesting because it was clear as day to me, but nobody else really saw it. And then immediately having a sound and something physical happen right next to me after, because the light flew in front of me to the door that was behind me. So like watching and then moving my head before the door even made a sound, and then it making a sound after I looked at it. That was pretty intense, and I was not expecting it at all. It's one of the um, biggest paranormal experiences I've had. If
Sure.
I, yeah,
Yeah. And we all heard the door. So again, that was interesting. It's hard to prove anything, and like I said, we unfortunately we just didn't have time to investigate. But
yeah, I would
Well,
have loved
even
to follow up on it and see what else we could have interacted with.
sure. Even having the
Right.
staff tell you that the door not being secure was anomalous as well. I mean, that's a secondary
Mhm.
oddity in the the situation, beyond just the uniqueness that it happened at all.
Right.
And then finding that there's something significant to the door itself. I mean, it would have been cool if it would have opened and somebody would have walked through, right? Like
Mhm.
Hmm.
either way, a person or not, but you get pretty close.
Mhm.
And I'm going to guess to ask this question to answer, but I'm assuming there was no video camera or any kind of capture of information here.
No.
No,
Nothing. Okay. And as always, right?
Yeah.
Of
yep.
course. Okay.
There were a couple other stories of things that happened there. One is there's a lot of doors that get locked and unlocked, and even when security systems are on, and the alarms never go off.
Hmm.
We heard
Yeah.
multiple stories of the workers there having to crawl out the window because the lighthouse locked from the outside. So they had to crawl out the window to unlock the door that they had the only keys inside the lighthouse. So
Wow.
that happened a couple times.
Well, Heather, is a little bit of a side note, but Heather asked a good question here. Do they offer private investigations aside from what you guys did?
I believe they do. We haven't looked into it, but I'm pretty sure they do. And when I had lunch with Tim and Erica when I was down there,
Ah,
and I
cool.
believe that they may be following up on that question to see if they do have tours or investigations, private investigations. So hopefully we'll get an answer there.
Okay.
So it was nice to spend an afternoon with Tim and Erica as well.
Sure.
So our Jotnix, New Jersey is now Jotnix, Florida. So and they were looking for sites down there to investigate. Um, One interesting thing is Southern people don't like to talk about this sort of thing. So
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. So well, good night, Todd. Thanks for joining
Great
us.
to see you. Get you next time. Get some rest.
So so they're looking for locations and they're gonna see what they can find. So
Cool. This feels like a road trip.
hmm
Absolutely.
so
It's a long drive.
Oh, I've done it.
We've all done it. Yeah.
and it was a little over 2 hour drive from Orlando to St. Augustine, but it was well worth the 4 hour round trip to do this. So
Well, from where we are in South Central Pennsylvania, 2 hours to the
Yeah.
west is Waynesboro, like
hmm
the Hoover House, and 2 hours to the east is Fieldsboro, New Jersey, which is White Hill. You
hmm
know, so an hour and a half, an hour and 45 southeast is Fort Mifflin,
hmm
Philadelphia in general.
Not
So I mean,
terrible.
we've done that drive back and forth, for stuff. So I would do it.
hmm
And Bert says, yeah, we can all stay with Tim and Erica. There we go. We got it covered.
I did take a look at the website, and they do offer private investigations at the lighthouse, so we will have to look into that.
There it
Yeah.
goes.
I'm sure the fee on that one is up there with some of the other ones, but again, it's well worth it.
Sure.
So,
Well, like everything else, though, it is if it's if it's a head count, then it gets then it adds in. But if it's just as many as you can bring for the rate, then it knocks down the per person rate.
right.
So I don't look at those as and two things. One is that, but two, and maybe the more important part is much like it is for White Hill and Fort Mifflin and all the other places that are public or historical sites, is that it's going to help with the upkeep and access for others as well as us,
Mhm.
to get to go to the place. And I have zero problem with that.
Right.
It is sometimes extraordinary cost wise, and I understand it, but these places are aged, they're not easily maintained. Budgets are tighter now than ever before with what's available to do this stuff. And and it all there are staff there, even though there are volunteers for the most part. There are still paid staff. There's overhead
Hmm.
that needs to be covered, and if my ticket helps to do that, that's great.
Hmm.
That's really cool, and I appreciate the access.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to.
Yeah. So some interesting things on talking about the upkeep. The 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 Fresnel lens itself is they're required to clean it once a week and then do a deep cleaning on it once a month.
Okay.
So you're talking about a 9-foot high glass cylinder that has to be cleaned. And the Fresnel lens, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're ridged and curved, and there's a lot of nooks and crannies in those.
That's a
Um,
lot of work.
yeah.
It's a lot of Windex.
And the other thing is, I can't imagine the restoration process that had to go into that after it was shattered by the rifle.
Yeah.
And this, from my understanding, that cost not as much as some of the other restoration, but it was up there as well, just because it was something that had never been done before on a lens this scale. So
Okay.
it was a national story when it was restored.
Wow. Well, you mentioned, to the first believed death, the keeper who fell
Uh-huh.
from painting, and it reminded me of something too. And this is an upkeep problem as well. But the lighthouse has to be painted on a certain cycle as well
Hmm.
for visibility. And it's interesting. I found this out when I was in Hatteras, North Carolina, at the lighthouse there, that lighthouses are patterned on purpose so that they're visible during the daytime,
Right.
which we don't think about it because there's 100 and something feet tall. They should be pretty obvious,
Right.
but they do tend to blend into the landscape. And for aircraft now, and of course they do have lights on the top, like the blinky lights that
Right.
we all have to have for towers.
Right.
But just for the general visibility sense, they're patterned.
Right.
And each of them has a different pattern,
Right.
so that when you're traveling the coastline, you can find where you are by sight reference instead
Right.
of just by chart, by navigational equipment.
Hmm.
So you don't get lost.
Right. I think I used that term in the presentation. It's called a day mark.
Yeah.
So like the day mark for this one was the spiral. And again, it depends which way the spiral is going, how thick
Yep.
the spiral bands are, and then the lamp house color. Like this
Yes.
one was a black and white spiral with a red lamp house. So
It's interesting, like how they're all unique, and you don't notice because you don't get to see them in any kind of order.
Right.
As someone out to sea would be traversing the coastline, north, south, whichever way they're going. You don't get to see them that way.
Right.
And they're not as common as they used to be, as far as what's left.
Right.
So, they're further and further apart or further
Right.
between.
Right. They still exist, and they are, as I think I called it out, they're privately owned navigational aids. They're not an important part of the navigation system anymore because GPS has taken over that, obviously.
Right.
Right.
But it's still nice when you're at sea to have a reference point,
Of
and
course.
say, oh, there's St. Augustine. So the view from the top was you could see well over 20 miles.
The
So that was
photos from the top were interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't see 20 miles when it was dark outside.
Shocking.
No, but you could see the beam just going what looked like to eternity. That was interesting.
That is cool. Yeah.
So
Well, gentlemen, you've been there and done that. The question is, it paranormal or not?
Oh yeah.
Yep. It's
Haunted?
spooky.
Spooky. Yeah. Okay.
There's some ghost stuff going on there.
All the ghost stuff.
I was waiting for that one. So yeah, I would definitely say it's paranormal. I mean, from our stories, what do you guys think?
Well, sure. The basement experience definitely. The the things that happen, the physical things like the doors locking on behind, locking people in instead of out, that kind of stuff. Some of that you can allude to being mechanical failure or uh, just age
Well,
of property, stuff like that.
you
Even the
can
door in the basement that
Jamie,
wasn't secured,
you
maybe.
can, except when they're padlocks.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of automatic locks. Okay.
Yeah, they're not doors that lock automatically. They were like padlocks and things like that. So
Maybe it was somebody who didn't get their driver's license back for not turning their K2 getting even.
maybe.
No.
But yeah, the life of a keeper must have been really hard. Can you imagine carrying? There were 5-gallon buckets, so they would typically carry 2 up at a time because it was a 10-gallon reservoir.
Yeah.
So you're carrying 70 pounds of oil.
Yeah. I deal with
no.
5-gallon pails at my employment a lot. Like we deal with them, and no. Well, yes, but no.
Right.
You know what you're getting into when you sign up for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an all day gig, all day every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, I guess I kind of go wow, to some degree, but then also as you settle into a routine, you get used to it, the work and the process. And I would imagine on the average day, it's probably not too bad, and especially given that it's Florida, obviously hurricane season is the exception to the weather, but
Uh-huh.
generally it's not like, rough seas and hard weather all the time, like you maybe get New England in the winter,
Right.
things like that. But wow, and every day's leg day,
Yeah.
right? When you're doing the steps, so
And
I
then
would have figured out some kind of a pulley or something.
well, same. That's what Bert said here. The
No,
thing is, the center of the lighthouse tower, because it does get narrower as you go up, so you would have to do that in the center. But that was taken up by the mechanism for the counterweight system.
yeah,
So it would have been hard. You didn't want to interfere with that, or the light would have stopped turning.
Yeah.
One of my coworkers said if I had that job, I would have made sure there was a second person, and he would have been at the top and jumped off, and the old Wile E. Coyote thing where he hits the thing in the middle and then goes flying.
yeah, the counterweight, right?
Yeah, but so yeah, I think I'm sure that was thought of, but there just wasn't room to do that with the mechanism that they needed to. And it's interesting because there's actually there's each level has if you look down through, has a guide bracket on it. So there must have been something attached to that would allow the counterweight to guide down. So
Okay.
So yeah, it's definitely a cool experience. I recommend it to everybody.
All right, well, let's go.
Road trip.
Get the bus.
So
Gas up the bus. We're out.
So all right. Well, I think that's all we've got about the lighthouse. So do you want to talk about what's coming up?
Sure.
All right. Alex, just hang out. We'll talk to you in a minute. So all right.
As he goes away, there is this good comment from Bert. Then you get a young pup like Alex to haul it up. Yes, sir, you do.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, next week we are going to Kirstin actually is going to take
Yeah.
Yuletide Judge, the Tales of the Belsnickel. So episode number one for you. I'm excited for this. I'm
Number
really looking forward
one.
to it. Number one of many.
Yes.
After that, a couple things. Yeah, we were caught in a time slip. Factor folklore on the 30th, going into January. And I can't believe we're talking about January already. In the new year, No Escape, Spirits of Spike Island. It's over in Cork, Ireland. The 13th, Hauntings of Hampton Court. And then January 20th, this one's kind of a callback to some degree to our episode with Whispers in the Dark at Gretna Theater, Gravels and Ghosts, the Paranormal Cases and the Law. So I'm looking forward to this one as well. I've known this was coming for a little bit. So more after that, of course. I only have so much room. And actually the week after is right before we head off to our road trip to the Hanover Tavern Paracon. So we'll be down on the 30th and 31st of January at the Hanover Tavern in Virginia. So if you're in and around the area, come visit with us, or at the Paracon, stop by and say hi. We'll have stuff with us and some stickers and some stuff about us and materials. But I'm really looking forward just to being there and catching up with everybody else too, and see what else is going on in the field. It's a really good event and really well attended. So get tickets now; they're still available.
Yeah.
And then us, the usual things. Obviously, you found us here on either this very live broadcast or catching us on the streaming services later. But if you want to check in with us at all, our website is jotnyxparanormal.com. That's JOTT-NYX paranormal.com. And you have an episode request or a thought for programming for us coming up, we're always open and willing to take it on. Just drop us a line via email at paranormallenspodcast@gmail.com. It's all spelled out. And then all of our socials and all of the cool stuff, our store even is on Linktree, which is linktr.ee and /paranormal lens. Or if you just Google Linktree, you'll find us in the search once you're on their site. So all good things are there.
Yep.
Well, Chad, this was a fun episode. And obviously, it's always more fun when you can be there.
Right.
Like we always joke, the Mount Joy is more fun when you sleep over. So is Florida, right? And certainly you didn't sleep in St. Augustine, but you were close. So
yeah,
glad you were nearby to take the opportunity to do this.
And it's one of those, like, St. Augustine is a town that I should just go spend a week there, because there's so many other things. I did tour the fort, which has its own paranormal stories.
Right.
So like I said, maybe that'll be another episode at some point.
Sure.
But yeah, again, it's just the history of that area. Like we talk about the history of our area being old.
Yeah.
The history of the eastern Florida coast is 450 years old.
Yep.
So you're dealing, not quite as old as some of the English and European stuff, but it goes back.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, St. Augustine is the oldest city in America.
That is correct. Yeah.
Right there, it is the starting point for so many other things, as far as the colonization and expansion of the colonizers, and which, good, bad, or ugly, it happened. And, it had to start somewhere. So the history is the deepest there because it is the longest. So you're right. And, those places, that have that tenure really have more interesting things about them. You've got to take the time to figure it out.
Yep. So,
again, road trip.
Yep. I think we all, we got to figure out a funding source, Jamie. One of us has to play the lottery and win that big prize.
I know. So many things. Well, it's like that. There's these memes where, like, if I won the lottery, I wouldn't tell anybody, but there'd be signs, and the next bit of it is like a whole herd of dogs running out of a gate, or something, or something like that. I would just be visible at all these paranormal places. You'd find me in pictures. Right. So, or the bus would show up at my house.
Heather said we did a week vacation with the kids, had a great time. They had an amazing Airbnb with a pool.
Okay.
So, and then Bert says, let's do a double header, the lighthouse and the fort.
Yes.
The fort is a national park, so I don't think that's going to happen. But
yeah.
But
we know how Gettysburg is, after dark. So it's It's definitely a permission versus forgiveness moment when you deal with the federal government in
Yeah.
places like that.
So, all right. Well, you guys have any other thoughts?
No.
I do not.
No? Okay. Well, legends, evidence, and personal experiences all collide at the St. Augustine Lighthouse, blurring the line between history and the unexplained. Are these encounters proof of something beyond our understanding, or simply the emotional imprint of the past? We'll let you decide. But as we continue exploring the paranormal, remember to stay alert, stay respectful, and stay curious. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.